Our production booth really consists of about a 16-foot area just at the back of the room with a kind of a producer's sitting area followed by a sound board. We use the Behringer Wing, followed by a camera switcher position and a lighting position. We have one person that sits and runs both, followed by a visuals person. And I thought just for a second I would kind of go down and list some of the pieces of equipment that we have. We really actually have two computers here. One that we can review the stream coming back from YouTube. One that's actually controlling the stream parameters. And then we use the Behringer Wing mixer, which is a 48 channel stereo input. We do have a stage box up on the stage, several, that allows us to bring in AES 50. That AES 50 is then duplicated down to a Behringer X32 rack, which is actually used for our IEMs. The front line has wireless, 4 wireless IEM Sure Packs that they can then connect into that X32 rack and adjust their in-ear levels. Down below that, we actually have a compressor, old analog type compressor that we use for our stream output. It is almost at the very end of our stream, and then a stream LED sort of indicator. The Wing is great because it really allows us a lot of functionality on actually creating an audio mix for the stream that we're satisfied with for right now without a separate mix. So we don't have a separate room or a separate person that's mixing our audio. We've sufficiently created a signal path and processing blocks on the Wing that allow us to just take a tap off of the mains and process it a little bit more. I do have another iPad for control of their InEar Monitor just in case they need it. Here I have actually just another iPad with a dual audio level meter. It's dBA and dBc, both slow scale. There's a little mic here. There's the old school audio level meter that we use, that we tune this one to. I do have it in 3 colors, green, yellow, and red, which allows the sound guys to know when we approach our limits. Our limits are 95 dBA and 105 dBc, and that just allows us to get a good consistent mix from person to person. Do have a talkback mic on a little boom. A couple other monitors here. We have a stream output monitor, so whatever's actually going on the stream is right here in the middle of the booth. Everybody can kind of look at it and help each other and say, hey, is there something wrong with the stream? Down below that is actually a stage display. This is the same stage display actually shown to the musicians up on the stage, and there's actually a TV facing the stage. We have the current lyrics, countdown timer, a video countdown timer, even current time. Over here we have basically another iPad that just has a this music playlist. Here's an iPad that actually controls the Sling Studio. We actually use the Sling Studio for our streaming, which is a box that is right there. We did connect a Ethernet connection to the USB-C port, so it wasn't running Wi-Fi, but it is still Wi-Fi from this iPad to that box, which sometimes poses some problems. And just along that line, actually I put up a Wi-Fi router right up on the ceiling that has its own ACC Tech sort of area, domain. Next to it, we actually use the Blackmagic ATEM Studio for camera switching. And so I actually have a computer which is a standalone computer which connects to the actual rack that's down in here, the ATEM Studio. Instead of having him use the front controls, we actually have it set up with both a Stream Deck, and they just use the keys on the keyboard, so they can actually select which camera needs to be pulled up at what time. And for instance, they might say ready 5 and push out 5, or they could even pull off the overlay from the computer. We do actually have 6 cameras and 2 channels actually used for our computer input, a key and a fill. So we've got, a camera 1 is a typical close-up. We've got camera 2 is a side shot, and a 3 is a roaming camera. I'll show you that in a second. Camera 4, actually, we went ahead and set up just recently on a motorized track. And so this camera actually just sits there and goes back and forth during the service. We had been using actually a camera jib that I built many years ago, and just it's basically a jib that I mirrored, I think, off of one of the Kessler jibs. I really enjoy using this. It actually has tilt control of the camera from down below. But without people running it and knowing how to run it, right now we just decided to use this Camera 4 on this motorized slider. For lighting, we actually use just the American DJ. I think it's my DMX3. So there's actually another computer sitting here. It's running their dedicated software. It was a very inexpensive solution for us. It allows us basically to create scenes. So we have lighting scenes for the house lights, for the worship stage, for the MC stage, for the back wall, and then some other miscellaneous things. This allows us just really throughout the service, because we don't do a lot of lighting changes, to basically bring up and down the house lights, and everything's set on a timer such that it's touch screen. So you can either touch it or use a mouse, and then it takes 10 seconds to now bring the house lights down to house 35% or so on. Down below that, we actually have a video rack, and the video rack actually has, that ATEM switcher. It actually has another one of these Ultra Studio HDs. You can hardly see it. I should bring a flashlight. This allows us to bring actually in 2 video channels into the mixer for the key and the fill from our Mac. We also then use a talkback microphone. It's a one-way communication system. It was actually very inexpensive. I think it was $200. It actually came up with 8 wireless packs that we actually put out on our camera operators. This little $30 or $40 sort of microphone, I have connected up into a compressor, which then allows me actually to have an old-time compressor. It has a gate, it has compression, which then transmits on this, I think it's called assisted listening system, basically. Yeah, and then I think down underneath all the rack, there's quite a few HDMI splitters, because when we first started pulling wires everywhere in the building, we just use HDMI. And of course we have SDI coming from the cameras. Over here, we actually run all of our video inputs and outputs basically through a matrix switcher. So we have 4 inputs and 4 outputs. It's a Roland XS1 HD. We have basically the output of our camera mixer, even the stage display, the projector output, and even another computer, just another PC, as inputs. And then the outputs really are the stage, the stream and the Fourier feed, a little preview monitor that's right here so they can pull up whatever feed that they need, stage display, and the projectors. And if I needed to, I could actually put on the projectors, for instance, the camera output. Or you could actually see the camera output up on the projectors. I could even put the stage display up there. Not that we would ever do that. Normally it would stay on projectors. Or you could put on that PC that's down the way. Over at the visuals computer, we are running ProPresenter 7, which allows us to have multiple outputs. The Mac is limited to having 2 physical outputs, so that would mean 3 monitors, a primary monitor, a stage display, and a projector display, which are not demonstrated here, but go through the matrix switcher. And then we added 2 more, I guess I'll call them logical external displays through that Ultra Studio, which got me that key and that fill inputs into that video mixer. I think I'm almost done, except I'll take you maybe out on a tour of some of the camera locations. One of the cameras that we use is Camera 1. These are Canon XA55s. We chose those because they're cost effective, but also a 1-inch sensor, so it does give us a little bit of narrower depth of field. This particular camera I went ahead and just put on a best score pan and tilt, so at small events like a devotional worship, I do have control of this camera over at that main switcher. I don't have to come over and rotate it even a little bit. Each camera location I have set up so that they have a monitor, not just up on the camera, but they can actually see what their camera feed is. And then I went ahead and decided to give the multi-camera feed to each camera operator so that they can see what all the other operators are giving. This allows certain operators to change their shot based on what everybody else is giving. So for instance, camera 2 can change their shot if camera 1, who has a priority, is already getting that particular shot. This is our roaming camera. It's a Canon C100. It's got a 70 to 200 millimeter lens on it. And then we use a Teradek, I think this is the 500 or series transmitter. So it's a wireless transmitter, then there's a battery. I did mount it all on a monopod. And although we are going for a cinematic look and having people roam with it, it is just so heavy that it does help for them to be able to set it down at different times and not have it. We don't have a belt sort of system right now. So on camera 2 is what I call it up here. We actually just have a straight up XA55 on a regular tripod. I built a little platform to get it up off the floor. Same sort of setup. You know, there's a camera for a monitor for them, then a multicam. They would then be wearing a headset listening to the director. We just now tried actually to create just a little platform that has springs on it. We'll see how well it works. It worked, you know, for a Sunday or two, which allows us to add just a little bit of motion if we want. You can run the tripod without it, but you know, I'll put a little rod on here and they can get maybe a little bit of motion. Hopefully that will make this tripod sort of camera look like it's roaming. That's the hope, that's the intent. Patent pending, haha. Here's our stage. We did create a piano platform. It is on wheels so that we can wheel it around. For the back line, we actually use P16s. So we do have a P16 network. And then for the front line, they use those wireless transmitters that they connect into. There's our stage display monitor. We do have 2 projectors for the sides. There is a center projector that we use for logos and world mandate sort of things at the center. We have the base station in the back. We do have lighting for basically 7 different positions on the front line. And what that really means is that we can either handle 4 people on the front line or 3 and still have 3-point lighting. I've got, you know, a hair light, I should say, and kind of a 2-point lighting out here for each of those 7 positions. So based on whether they have 3 people or 4 people, we've got them well lit. The drum cage is also on a platform. It has wheels, so that's nice to be able to move it around just a little bit. We did add another track camera, which just has one of these Marshall CV506s cameras that moves back and forth. It gets us basically a drum shot that's not static. It is just a little bit of motion, and again, trying to get that cinematic sort of feel without a lot of humans is a little bit difficult. We have quite a few talkback mics since I'm talking about it. There's, I don't know, four different talkback mics locations. So one of them is in the drum cage. There is a stomp box down at the bottom which allows him to turn that talkback mic on and talk to people in the ears. We did go with a XY sort of orientation on the overhead mics, just little pencil condenser mics. And then, let's see, we do have an Audix D6, which I positioned into the kick drum. The base station is typically our MD, and so there is a talkback mic there with a stomp box. And then on the front line, we do use these Shure Beta 87As. They're super cardioid, which now I probably wish weren't, because then when they get right up on the mic, there's quite a lot of woof. But most of them are wired. There is one wireless front line. That just allows us to let that one person, usually there's one person on the worship team that wants to spin around and dance, and that's the person right there with the mic, wireless mic. This person is usually our lead. They have a guitar sort of station and a talkback mic, so they can sing and or do an A-B switch on their talkback. And the same thing really with their piano. So there's quite a lot of conversation sometimes going on between the musicians, or even just versatility. It just allows us to, you know, move that MD position around to whatever's needed. Almost done. Most everybody on the back line is P16s, but there is a couple. This is just a headphone amp. They can also connect it to that X32, and even though I don't have a wireless transmitter, they can get a stereo mix from that X32. That's the benefit really of not using the P16s right now, is the stereo in-ear mix that they get. And we hope to put a whole nother wing mixer there to get their stereo mix all the way around. This back wall is kind of cool in that it is really just a wood slatted, you know, stained, typical sort of wall you see lots of places. We did create troughs, and inside of these troughs there is a set of LED strips, and I guess we have 5 of them. That allows us to basically light up the wall and then project light on top of that, and it kind of gets a nice depth on some of the wall. I think if there's anything else on our front line, we have just point sources. So, you know, our ceiling height is 13 feet. So we, you know, have these point source JBL monitor speakers, and there's 4 of them on the front line, separated so they're not in clusters. And then we have one, I guess I'll call it delay row, which has another 4 speakers. These are JBL RX 515s. And then there's another layer behind that at 2 different spots, one back over there in the corner. And that's about it. I did experiment with trying to get a back fill. So there's some even speakers right there in the back firing back at the audience to kind of surround them in the music. I do have a separate slider control on the wing for that. That allows us to keep vocals up in the front. And so people aren't distracted and thinking, oh, where's the vocal coming from behind me? But I am able to put some instrumentation back behind them. And, you know, in some circumstances, I turn that up and immerse the crowd in the music. Since I'm here, I think this room is a little bit messier than I'd hoped, but I think I'll go ahead and show you it. We do have an amp room that's right off of our sanctuary. It's nice because then I've got all my cables basically up on the rack. I do have a rack with spare batteries and spare, you know, things. But then inside of here really is the amp rack. We are using these Crown amps. We have 2 DBX drive racks, 360s, venues, and then some other crowd amps. This is all sequenced power from the sound booth, which is nice. And then just a lot of little tiny shelves, you know, for mics and direct boxes and things like that. Really is nice to have a booth or a little closet that's not out in the garage, you know, for our other stuff. So thank you for watching, and I hope to do some more of these training videos later.